Hi everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today I'm going to be doing a color and chat, and while I chat with you guys, I'm going to be coloring this little cutie. This was a page I wanted to get to in January, but I didn't, so I figured I'd get to it now. It's out of Chibi Girl's coloring book. This is copyrighted by Alice Brockmeyer. So I'm just going to be doing this little rain bear onesie chibi. So cute. I've kind of started it. I have some colors picked out to do the onesie. And yeah, so today we're just going to be chatting about everything that I read in January. I read 17 books, which is a lot. I think a record for me. I started full-time back in December at my job, so I actually have quite a lot more time now to listen to audiobooks, which if you didn't know, that is how I am able to read so much. I listen to audiobooks pretty much all the time. It works well with pretty much all of my other hobbies except for gaming, and I'm able to listen to them at work. So I pretty much have 8 hours plus my drive, which is another hour. I listen to audiobooks while I drive. I listen to audiobooks while I do the dishes, while I color, while I diamond paint, while I get ready. You can, in the bathtub, you can listen to audiobooks while you do everything. So they're really easy to multitask, and then you are able to get a lot more reading done. So if you've ever, wondered, wow, how does she read so much? It's audiobooks. But a goal I did set for myself this year was to read more physical books, because I didn't read nearly as many physical books as I would have liked to last year. So I'm going to be trying to utilize the library more. I went and I got my own library card, because before my mom uses the library a lot, so she was just going ahead and like picking up books that I wanted here and there for me, but I've gotten really into using the library, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna go and get my own library card. So I did get my own library card in, actually just got it, so this month, but I was able to read a few library books and a book off my own personal shelf. So yes, my goal is at least one physical book from the library, one Kindle book, because I also got a Kindle at the end of last year, and I have Kindle Unlimited. So one library book, like physical library book, one Kindle, and one book off my shelf as far as physical books go. So I have my goals set, and I easily did all of those goals in January. So all right, so since I do have 17 books to talk to you guys about, let's jump into this. So the first book I read in January was All the Light We Cannot See. This is by Anthony Doerr. This was a historical fiction based on World War II. It followed the perspective or the point of view of a young boy and a young girl living very different lives. The young boy was in an orphanage and ended up being taken out of the orphanage to become a Nazi, and the young girl was a young French girl, and she ends up going blind and lives with her father and follows them through their escape to safety during the war. Sorry if the camera's shaky. Yeah, so it follows them from the age, I think, of like very young till all the way up until the story concludes. And it was very interesting. I listened to this on audio from the library, and I think it had a lot more potential had I read it physically. But it was a really good book. It was really interesting. Really well written. I feel like I would have enjoyed a little bit more of the interaction between the two characters, because you don't actually get the interaction till later on in the story. But yeah, if you do like historical retellings of that time period, I think you would really, really like this one. It was really good. And I rated All the Light We Cannot See, 3 out of 5 stars. Next book I read was The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. So The Cruel Prince is the first book in the Folk of the Air series. So this book I actually listened to on audio back in October of last year, and a lot of the people who I get book recommendations from really loved this series. And so I was really excited to listen to it because I heard nothing but good things. And then when I listened to it, I actually just didn't enjoy it all that much. I found it kind of boring, and I didn't really get it. So I decided, okay, I'm gonna actually physically read this because I'd been hearing more things about it, and I was like, to be honest, this really does sound like something I would like, so I'm just going to try and physically read it and see if that changes my opinion. So I got it from the library, so I did physically read this one, and yeah, physically reading it definitely changed my opinion on this one. I actually really ended up enjoying The Cruel Prince. It is a young adult fantasy. It takes place in fairy, so like Feyland. So there's Fey people, but our main character is actually a human navigating her world through fairy as a human, and all of the perils and awkwardness it is to be a human living in fairy. I really like The Cruel Prince, the Folk of the Air series, because it does take a different take on fairy. It's darker and more mysterious and cruel versus being just whimsical and magical. While the book is very whimsical and magical, it's also dark, and like she has a lot of, figuring things out, and it's very political, which I think is what I didn't like when I listened to the audio. I felt like, it's just like politics, and while it is a lot of that, the high court and all of that, there is a stunning romance in this, and it's enemies to lovers, really just enemies to enemies. And yeah, I really, really liked it once I physically read this one. And I ended up rating The Cruel Prince 4 out of 5 stars once I physically read it. So it was really good. Next, I read Legendborn by Tracy Dion. So this book had a really, really, really cool concept. Is this her hair? No, I think it's the hood. This book had a really cool concept. I've heard it pitched many times as a King Arthur retelling, like a magical King Arthur retelling. At the beginning of the book, I was really, really, really enjoying it. I really thought the story was captivating. The writing was really good. This is a YA fantasy, is how I would say it, just very broad YA fantasy. It is a King Arthur retelling, but it is so much more than that. By midway through this book, I was overwhelmed with how many things are going on in the plot. There was just so much. Don't get me wrong, all of it is cool. It is very interesting. I just don't know that it meshed well for me. It was just a little too much going on. I also didn't like the narration. I listened to this on audiobook. I didn't particularly like the narration. So maybe if I would have physically read it, maybe I would have enjoyed it a little bit more. But another thing, critique on this, I didn't believe the romance whatsoever. I didn't feel like they had chemistry at all. I felt like there was no reason for them to like each other. Yeah, I don't know. There's just a lot going on. There's unraveling of a murder. There's magic. There's all sorts of things going on in this book. While still being a King Arthur retelling, as far as I don't know. King Arthur retelling, I don't really even know what that means exactly, besides the fact that they say there's Knights of the Round Table, and there's a King Arthur and stuff like that. But I feel like other than using those words, it has nothing to do with King Arthur. But yeah, if you like magic, and it's set at a college, so it's kind of academia. I don't know about dark academia, a little. It's a little spooky, but yeah. If that setting sounds cool to you, then maybe pick this one up. I definitely have heard really good things about this. I just didn't personally do it for me. And I ended up giving Legend Born 3 out of 5 stars. All right, the next book I read was The Wicked King, which is the second book in the Folk of the Air series by Holly Black. Oh my goodness. So The Wicked King was a continuation of The Cruel Prince. This one was so good. I actually liked this a lot more than the first book because, as I mentioned, The Cruel Prince was a lot of politics, a lot of like court stuff. This one gets more into the relationship and the romance, and I absolutely love the dynamic between Jude, our main character, and Carden, our love interest. I love their dynamic. It is definitely bully romance, bully, you know, enemies, but like secretly loving each other, loving it, loving fighting, loving all of it. I really enjoyed reading their romance, and this one was just a lot more interesting for me than The Cruel Prince. So I ended up rating this one 4.5 out of stars. This honestly would have been a 5-star read for me. I devoured this book in like 24 hours. Had it not been for the ending. Obviously this entire like video, I'm not gonna have spoilers on anything, unless I specifically say, all right, I'm gonna say spoilers. But yeah, the ending for this one I hated it. I was like, no. I didn't like the way it ended, so I ended up rating it 4.5 out of stars, but honestly, so good. Super recommend this one if you read The Cruel Prince and aren't sure if you want to continue on with the series. I would say definitely do it because The Wicked King was so good. Okay, next I read Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating by Christina Lauren. So this is a adult romance, and it follows Hazel, who is a quirky girl who meets Josh back in college, and then they end up finding that they have a mutual, not even mutual friend. Hazel's best friend ends up being Josh's sister, and so they end up reconnecting as adults way later on in life, and circumstances happen. She ends up rooming up with him and yada yada. You know how adult romances go. I honestly enjoyed this for the most part. I didn't mind, you know, the two characters. They were good together. I liked the banter. I liked the story. I kind of hated the conflict. That the conflict was literally just that, oh, I'm too quirky. Like that was literally the entire conflict. Like, I'm just too quirky. Like, I'm just too different. Like, he's just not gonna like me because I'm just so quirky. Like, that was the entire conflict. Like, I hated that. I absolutely hated that. But what I hated more, and why I ended up rating this book 2.5 stars, was the ending. The ending was absolutely awful. I found it very gross. And if you want to know what the ending was, you should, I mean, I'm not even going to recommend this. I say pass. If you like Christina Lauren books, Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating was not it for me. Like I said, it was mediocre at best without the ending, and then the ending just really pushed it over to being not great. Just really not great. Didn't like this one, so 2.5 out of stars for Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating by Christina Lauren. Next, I read The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins. This was a adult thriller, so this one was really good for, especially if you're new to thrillers. I highly recommend this. If you just want to like dip your toes in, see if you like thrillers. This one was really easy, really fun. Nothing too dark, honestly, because you guys know thrillers can get, maybe you don't know, but thrillers can get really dark really fast. They can be really heavy topics, and I missed her ear. The Wife Upstairs was really not too bad. Nothing too crazy. A little bit like of a murder mystery with some fun twists. Very fun. Like I said, easy entertainment. Like very easy to consume, very easy to read. I really liked it. It was my first book by Rachel Hawkins. She just released a new one I'm going to be reading as well. So yeah, I ended up giving The Wife Upstairs 3.5 stars, and I really enjoyed it. Next is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. Oh, I I haven't been saying either. I don't know when I stopped saying. Legendborn was audio. The Wicked King was a physical book from the library. Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating was on audio, and The Wife Upstairs was also on audio. So Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston I read on audio as well from the library. So this was another adult romance, and this was a male-male queer romance, and it follows the first son of the president, who is a female, and the prince of the Queen of England. So that was fun. That was cute. I hated the audiobook. I didn't like the narration. He made both characters sound like way older than they were supposed to be. I think the main character's like 21 and 23, and he made them sound like middle-aged men, and it really took me out of the story personally. Like I just could not get into it because of the narration. Also, I found them kind of boring as like two entities. I didn't really like them. I enjoyed them as a partner, like partners, but as two separate characters, I just found them very boring. The book was kind of just slow. I mean, yeah, it wasn't my favorite romance, that's for sure. So I ended up giving Red, White, and Royal Blue 3 stars. So the next book I read was All of Us Villains. This was by Amanda Foody, and there's another author, and Christine Lynn Herman. So All of Us Villains is YA fantasy, Hunger Games, but with magic. So I think like that's the best way to describe this one. So if that sounds interesting, it's multi-point of view. There's a bunch of characters that we get to follow. This was so well written. The writing in this was really good. I really enjoyed the character development. I felt like the only thing that was lacking was the world building. I found it really hard while I was reading this to imagine the world that this story was taking place in. It felt olden day but modern. It was a mix of magical, modern. It was confusing, and also that's not my favorite in books is when they mix magic with modern day things. So imagine there's everyone using magic and everyone's using spells, but also going to the grocery store and picking up laundry detergent and playing volleyball in school. You know, I just like, I feel like that clashes for me, and it makes it hard for me to picture the story. But that being said, that was pretty much like my only issue with the book. Otherwise, it was so good. So basically what's going on in this one is a cursed small town, and every blood moon, the chosen families, like the 4 founding families, have to offer up one of their children to compete in this tournament, where the grand prize is power over the last remaining remnants of raw magic, which the rest of the world believes that raw magic is no longer, but in this small town they do have raw magic, and this tournament basically decides which family gets to have power over that raw magic for the next 20 years until the next blood moon comes around. So like I said, we get to follow multiple of the children that end up going into this. I say children, they're teenagers. I think anywhere from like 15 to 18 years old, taking place in this tournament. And it's just so good. The characters are so amazing. The interactions are good. The magic is good. It's dark. It's violent at some times. It is YA, so it's not an adult book, but yeah, it's so good. There's going to be a sequel. I cannot wait for it. The ending is amazing. It ended on like a huge cliffhanger. This was so good, like I said. So if Hunger Games, but more magical, if that sounds up your alley, I would definitely check out All of Us Villains, and I ended up rating this 4.5 stars. So the next book I read was A Flicker in the Dark by Stacey Willingham. So this actually just came out last month, and I was able to get it on audio. Oh, again, All of Us Villains I read physical from the library as a library book, and A Flicker in the Dark I got on audio from the library. Yeah, and so it came out in January, and I was able to get a copy of it as soon as it came out. This was another adult thriller. It's like a psychological thriller. It follows a daughter follows the daughter of a convicted serial killer of young women when 20 years later, young women start going missing around her once again. So we get a past and a present point of view from this woman. And yeah, it's really interesting. This was really good. Again, the writing was really good. This could easily been adapted or could easily be adapted into a Netflix show or a movie. I mean, the transitions between past and present were so smooth, and I loved that in this book. Like, it felt so good. Like easily transitioning between her remembering things and where she was in like present day. Like, it was so good. I really enjoyed it. The twists were pretty good. Again, I think this was a pretty easy thriller. It wasn't anything too crazy, a little predictable, I have to say. I hate saying things like that in reviews because I feel like when I say something is predictable, then at the beginning of the book, you're probably looking for anything that seems predictable, then it's going to probably end up being that. So I hate to say things like that. But again, what might be predictable for me could be a total blindside for somebody else. But I did, as far as thrillers go, this wasn't the most original. It didn't have the most stunning, jaw-dropping plot twist at the end, but it was still really, really good read and a really interesting, fun time. So I gave it 3.5 stars. All right, next we have, oh geez, Ice Planet Barbarians. This book is by Ruby Dixon. I don't even know what to say about this. Basically, this is one of those, if you've also read this, pretend that you don't know that I read it book. A very silly, goofy time. An adult romance, a very adult romance, steamy, spicy time following a woman who ends up getting stranded on a alien planet and romances with a alien who looks like the avatars from, or the Na'vi people in Avatar. Yeah. And that's the whole book. Nah, I mean, there was a plot. There was a plot. It was a silly, goofy time. Like I said, I don't know how else to like better explain it. Like, it was so silly. This book is not trying to be serious at all. At least I hope not. It's very cringy writing. But if you're looking for something lighthearted, I think that this will work out for you. Maybe not, I don't know. It was getting like really popular. I was seeing it everywhere, and I saw that it was on Kindle Unlimited, so I was like, okay, like I'll give it a read. It's not too long of a book whatsoever. It's really short. Yeah, it's just really silly. One of those like eye roll moments of like, what did I just read? I don't even know, but there you have it. I ended up rating it 2.5 stars. The next book I read was Daughter of the Pirate King by Tricia Levenzeller. This book was so cute. I liked it so much more than I was expecting to. It was a very enjoyable, fun little pirate story. It was super fast, my stomach. It was super fast paced. It had really likable characters. The banter between our main character and the love interest was so cute. I really liked it. I ate this up. Like, I read this so fast. I couldn't put it down. It was such a cute story. Just a cute little female pirate, getting onto a ship to find a hidden treasure map and all of the mischief that she gets into. It was just so good. I really like this. I highly recommend this. It literally started out with a quote from Pirates of the Caribbean. So I was like, yep, I'm gonna like this. This is so cute. So yeah, definitely check that one out. I ended up rating it 4 stars. Also, side note, I just can't do it. I cannot color and talk at the same time, you guys. Like, I have had to stop so many times and just like color. I'm editing that out, obviously, but like, even I just can't color with the camera in my face. Like, I am having so much difficulty coloring this page right now, and I'm actually hating how the shading is coming out. I'm just like, this looks so bad. Like, so I don't know. Like, I just cannot. Maybe I'll get used to it. I don't know. I just find this very difficult to color on camera. I mean, I'm going to push through it and we're going to continue with it since we're already like more than halfway through the books that I've read, but I don't know if I'm going to keep doing this. Also, I don't even know how good the like reviews of each book are coming out. I'm just rambling, or I don't even know. So either way, the next book I read is An Ember in the Ashes by Saba Tahir. This is the first book in, I think, a 4 or 5 book series. An Ember in the Ashes follows multi-point of view, a young woman who is tasked with infiltrating a school of trained ruthless killers. And then we get to follow a young man who is about to graduate from that school as a trained assassin or ruthless killer. Basically like a guard in the Empire who is controlling this area right now, and the young woman is more of like on the poorer side, the people who are being enslaved by the Empire. So she ends up joining forces with the rebellion, and her mission is to get her brother back, who was enslaved and put in prison. So her entire mission is to get her brother out of prison before he is murdered. And it turns out her brother ends up being someone very, very important to the rebellion and to the overthrow of the Empire, possibly. So yeah, I liked this. I enjoyed it. I listened to this on audio. It was interesting, very fast-paced, and I think I overall liked it. It's not my like perfect story. Obviously, I prefer a lot more like romance and magic, and it is fantasy for sure. It's just, again, like a lot of like heavy on the politics, and that's just not necessarily my favorite thing to read about. But I did overall enjoy it, so I gave it 3.5 stars. Then I went ahead and read Daughter of the Siren Queen. Which was the second book, following Daughter of the Pirate King by Tricia Levenzeller. This was a really good wrap-up to the previous story. I really enjoyed it. Not as much, unfortunately, as the first one, just because there wasn't nearly as much like fun banter between her and the love interest. Not that this one got more serious by any means. It's still kind of like an adventure. I think this one just focused more on explaining, giving characters more of a, the backstory on the characters and wrapping everything up. So it was really good still. I did enjoy it, just wasn't as good as the first one. But it was a really good wrap up to everything. And I still definitely recommend reading it if you end up reading the first one. And I gave it 3.5 stars. Then I read Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco. This was actually a reread for me. The first time I read it, I physically read it. I own the book. And then this time I went ahead and I listened to it on audio because I had heard the audiobook was really good, and the second book just came out. So I wanted a little refresher because I read this book, I think, all the way back in February or March of last year. So I did want to like catch up and a refresher of the story and listen to the audiobook. The audiobook was good. I wouldn't say by any means it was a bad audiobook. I just personally don't think that the special effects and the added music and things like that are really for me when it comes to audiobooks. I prefer to not be distracted by those things. I also listen to books on 1.75 times speed, so a lot of those things get distorted anyways when I'm listening. So I prefer it just to be, the narration, and I don't need like music and sound effects and things like that. But the audiobook was good, don't get me wrong. The book in general is very atmospheric. It takes place in olden day Italy. It has witches, it has magic, it has romance, demon princes. Like, it's really good, really fun, interesting, intriguing story, and I definitely enjoyed it just as much, but not nearly as much as when I physically read it. So I would recommend you to physically read this one if you can. And I gave it 4 stars. Next, I read House of Salt and Sorrows, which just was a book off my bookshelf that I hadn't read yet. This is by Aaron A. Craig. House of Salt and Sorrows. How do I even explain this one? This book was really unexpected, very strange, like tragically strange. I don't even know what to say. It follows a young girl unraveling the mystery of her sisters' deaths. Her sisters keep tragically dying one by one, and she decides that it has to be more than a curse. Everyone just believes her family is cursed. She believes it has to be more than that, and she wants to unravel the mystery of why her sisters keep dropping dead. This book just went in a very different direction than I thought it was going to. I read a review, and I really liked the way the person put it, that they felt like, and so did I, like the genre changed halfway through the book. And I completely agree with that. But I guess this book is actually a retelling of a story. So, it makes sense why things happened the way they did. It was following the original story. But yeah, it got very strange. I would say this book definitely had lots of like horror elements. The horror in this book, I think, was really good. It was like very spooky. I really liked reading it. I wish it had more of that. I wish it went more of like the paranormal direction than direction it actually took. The book was super atmospheric. It takes place in a manor by the sea. It was really cool. But yeah, it just went in a different direction than I was expecting it to. And it did get kind of slow near the middle. But overall, it was still a good story. I still liked it, and I gave it 3 stars. Alright guys, we have 2 more books to get through. The next one is A Torch Against the Night, an Ember in the Ashes, book number 2 by Sabaa Tahir. This was a really well written, again, continuation of the first book. The storyline got really interesting. It was a lot more action packed. We end up getting to see the 2 main characters from the first book come together on their journey to free her brother from prison. So that was really good. We get more character development. Their relationship between those 2 characters grows. We even get a third point of view from a character from the first book, which I really liked. Yeah, this is really good. There's a lot of like good dynamics between the characters. The world is cool. The whole idea of the book is really cool. Again, it's just not my perfect cup of tea for what I like to read, but I personally think it's good for me on audiobook. It's just a nice little story to have on in the background. So I think I will continue on with the series. I'm just not like in a super rush to finish it or anything. I'm not dying to know what happens, but I'm also perfectly fine with finding out what happens. So I gave Torch Against the Night 3 stars. So the last book I read was The Bad Beginning, A Series of Unfortunate Events number 1. So this is a super old book from my past. I read A Series of Unfortunate Events religiously as a young child. I was obsessed with this series. I went to Walmart on release day every time a new book came out, and my mom bought me the new book. I absolutely loved this series. When the Netflix show came out, I was so excited. A little let down, to be honest, with how they ended up doing it, but that's neither here nor there. I saw that Libby, the library app, had the audiobooks, and so I was like, okay, I'm definitely going to give these a go. They're only like 3 hours on audio. So in between or waiting for a book I'm wanting to come on hold, I was like, I could easily listen. So I ended up listening to The Bad Beginning right at the end of the month. And it is a full cast audiobook. So that means it has different voice actors for every single part of the book, which I don't really like. I find it very distracting. But as this is a child's book or children's book, I think that this would be such a good book to throw on like on the car ride to school or whatever in the car to listen to. It's very interactive. It's like super immersive, and I think kids would really like it. So I get why it's that way. Me personally, I don't love full cast audiobooks, but this is so short and there's not a ton of different characters and things going on, so it doesn't take me out of the book too much. But again, like I said, there's tons of sound effects and all of that, and since I listen to it so fast, it definitely distorts everything and makes things sound weird. But as far as the story goes, this book follows 3 orphans and their journey to find happiness, I guess, really, if they ever really do. No one knows. But yeah, it's a kind of shocking that I read this as a kid. Listening to it as an adult, I'm like, this is really dark. It really is. But again, it's a really, really good story, and they're really short books, so I rated it 3 stars. All right, guys, that is the 17 books that I completed in January. That was a lot. I don't know how I did. I felt like I did really bad. I felt like this didn't go smooth. Again, I feel like color and chats are just not my thing. I really don't feel comfortable chatting and coloring at the same time. I guess it's just not something I can multitask and do. Maybe if I was like diamond painting or something, I don't know. I feel like my brain can't compute words and where I want to lay down color at the same time. Like, it's just too difficult. Or maybe I just need to do a color by number. I'm not really sure. So I don't even know if that was very interesting. I kind of felt like I was like talking fast and I didn't really say everything I wanted to, because in the back of my head I was also like, don't ramble, don't make this video an hour. I don't know, maybe it's still an hour. I'm rambling now anyways. But before I go, I did want to share with you guys my reading journal. If I do make this a habit of, let me straighten this up. If I do make this a habit and I do this every month, you guys will have to let me know if you even enjoyed this. I do want to show you guys my spreads every month. So I wanted to show you how my January spread ended up turning out. So this was January. So my TBR was All of Us Villains, Legendborn, House of Salt and Sorrow, Regretting You, and Queen of Nothing. So I got to 3 out of the 5 of those, which is pretty good. This is how I did on reading. So I keep track of my physical, my Kindle, my audio, and combination. So days I read more than one of those. So I did pretty good. I read, or I listened to audio pretty much every single day except for 3 days. And so yeah, that was, again, I mean, I read 17 books, so I had a really good reading month. This is where I just write down all the books that I read and my ratings for them. And then I have my favorite book of the month, which ended up being The Wicked King. I'm going to print out the cover of the book and stick it there. And then I just wrote a few like thoughts. And then my January stats. So I have 17 books read, 1,662 pages, 135 hours, yada, yada, yada. I kept track of the formats, my ratings, my authors, genres, and how many of each type of book. And this is February spread. So I just wanted to quickly show you guys what February spread looks like. I mean, obviously I'll show you it completed if I do this video again in March. Yeah, I think this one came out. I'm so happy with February spread. I think it came out so cute. So that is my reading journal. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, if you want to know anything about the coloring or anything more about the books, let me know. I think I'll have my Goodreads linked in the description box of this video. If you guys want to follow me on Goodreads, I keep track of everything I read and what I want to read over there. It's a really good app for keeping track of all of your wish list books and different genres that you're reading. When you're completing books, you can rate them over there as well. So I highly recommend Goodreads if you like to read too. So my memory card is getting full, so I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a great rest of your day or night, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye!